Welcome to Protect What Matters, Estate and Elder Law with Tim Murray.
Welcome to Protect What Matters, Estate and Elder Law with Tim Murray, a Winamac lawyer in Indiana. Tim has more than 35 years of experience helping Indiana families with estate planning, probate, and elder law matters. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about how local law office like Tim Murray keeps legal, services personal, from house calls to community connections, and why that down-to-earth approach still matters for families across Indiana. Tim, sir, welcome back.
Thank you, Evan, and good morning. Nice to be back.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, Tim, you've practiced, you're for more than 3 decades right here in your home community. What made you decide to kind of build your firm around serving local families instead of that big city practice?
Well, a couple of things. I think the first thing is, they say you can take the boy off the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy. And anybody who knows me locally knows that I grew up a farm boy, and that's all I knew for the first 25 years of my life or so. I never had to worry about a summertime job like some kids did in college, because I knew what I was going to be doing. I was working the farm, and I grew up that way, and I like it's a lifestyle choice. I think too many times anybody in any profession, let alone lawyers, make a choice based on money or position and those kind of factors. And I just wanted to, I have no desire, nothing against anyone who lives in a larger metropolitan area or city, but my lifestyle and how I like to live is here and in this kind of community and environment. And it's just who I am and how I like to do things. So
you're known for offering house calls, though. What led you to start doing that? What kind of situations make it most helpful to clients that you do that?
When I started dealing more, Evan, with people in estate planning and especially elder law situations or people who are disabled, there's a lot of, we're resource poor in Pulaski County and surrounding counties, which means we don't have a lot of public transportation. But we do have some, but it's limited, and people don't always have a vehicle or someone to bring them. And I found that, if I'm going to make this work for some people and get the services and help to them that they need, I'm just going to have to go to their home or go to the hospital or go to a nursing home. And actually it's just easier sometimes. It's not, a son or a daughter or a couple of them don't have to unload mom or grandma and try to get her to walk the 30 steps it takes to get from the curb to my front door, which doesn't sound like that should be a task, but it is for a lot of people. And so because of these things, and now I don't want anybody to think that I'm just going to do house calls willy-nilly. I'm just, if you can make it to my office, I'm not going to give you a house call, but just because choice, you have to have some kind of issues going on that I'm going to willing to accommodate that and come to your home or like I said, the nursing home or hospitals.
So, but when you meet someone in their home, though, how does that kind of change the conversation compared to sitting across that desk in the office?
That's a good question. I mean, now that I think about that question, I think a lot of people are intimidated or nervous when they come to a lawyer's office. And that's one thing that I always try to remove from my environment. And I think one of the big changes and differences is that, if you come to my office, I'm trying to make you feel welcome and offer you a bottle of water or a cup of coffee, but people are nervous. And do I sit here? Do I not put my feet on the couch? Do I not, all these kind of things when they come to my office. And I think it's kind of the reverse when I go to someone's home. I think, now they're extending courtesy to me. And I think that serves to break down a lot of barriers and to break the ice, so to speak, because now they're offering me the courtesy and the welcome and, hey, come in and sit down. And would you like a bottle of pop or a glass of water or a cup of coffee? And I think by that role reversal just in hospitality, you wouldn't think so. I didn't even think about that till, just now, actually. I think that really means a lot.
Right.
When you're communicating and trying to put people at ease to talk about things and not be so intimidated for, talking to the lawyer kind of thing, and how that, and I get that a lot. People are just really intimidated about, I was at a meeting the other day where I was asked to be a panelist, and I I was telling a bunch of farmers, a group of farmers, and I said, one of the problems I get is when mom and dad have me do some estate planning or elder law, and they want to bring the kids in or the family. I think the kids and family can be intimidated because, oh yeah, there's mom and dad and they got their lawyer, and we're going to get
Right.
taken advantage of or something like that. And the intimidation just comes with the JD at the end of my name sometimes, and I really try to stay away from that. I just, I really like to keep it amicable, but I think that really, meeting people in the home, I think it factors in on the hospitality issue, and it breaks down those barriers more.
Yes, but for those families in the small towns and rural areas, what challenges do they face in finding legal help? How do you try to bridge that gap for the people that kind of struggle to do that?
I well, in Indiana, where there's been a lot of things going on. We call them they call them in Indiana legal deserts, where
Hmm.
there's just not enough lawyers in rural counties like ours to serve the per capita numbers of people in the population and things. And I think one of the first problems we have as a state, and that's being addressed, is that we don't have enough lawyers in towns and counties like where I am. So so being available and having enough legal services for people, I think, is part of the problem for people. Another thing is transportation. If someone were to have to drive to an hour or two away, or even 20 minutes, sometimes transportation is an issue. And just having a lawyer that deals with a particular kind of law. I know that one of the reasons I do estate planning and elder law now is that 20 or 25 years ago, I was talking to a client of mine, and they said they were going to Fort Wayne, and I go to see a lawyer, and I go, yeah, and for those of you who don't know, that's like an hour and a half drive from here, and it's not a straight shot. It's one of those places you can't get to easily. And
Mhm.
I said, well, why are you going there? Because I'm thinking, why aren't you coming to me? And they said, well, we need to do some estate planning, and uh, we don't think there's anybody around Winnemac or Pulaski County lawyers that do that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, well, actually, there was a lot of expletives that were going through my mind at that time. But
Like, I can do it.
yeah, so what I started doing was not just the regular basic will and power of attorney. I started educating myself as many lawyers do. Where you see a need, we have to become more educated and knowledgeable in those areas. So I've spent, for the past 25 years, just being a better lawyer in elder law and estate planning and wills and trusts and their administration, and how you take, and just working with all these different tools and the deeds and all the different things you can do, so that I don't have to hear somebody say they drove to Fort Wayne to hire an estate planning attorney when, you have somebody right here in your own backyard that can take care of those needs. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, so communication and trust are probably very important parts of your work. How do you build that trust with clients who may be nervous, like you were saying, about meeting a lawyer, for the first time?
I think communication and trust are just uh, so big. And first off, on communication, a lot of lawyers in general, and I think we have a stereotype that I try to beat down, is we don't stay in contact with our clients enough. And usually that's after the initial meeting, and and I get that, and we're busy and we have excuses for everything, as does everyone. But I really work and try to get my team to work on staying in communication, whether it's by email or telephone, with people, so that, we have text messaging in our system so that it reminds people about things from our system. We try to keep in contact and keep those things in place. But I think initially on, to build that communication and trust, is that um, I just want to talk to people. I want to talk to people. I want to get their story. I want to find out about their families. I always tell people, look, this is not going to be usually not a one and done meeting. I need to get to know you. I need to get to know your families. And I share a lot of my life and personal stories and family life too. I think that story exchange and being able to relate to people that have grown up and live in this area, what it's like to uh, grow up in the country or in a small town, or to go to a school that only has not 450 people in your senior class, but 450 people in the whole high school. And, those kind of things that, a lot of people can't relate to and have stories about. So, and I think that really, once they find out that I'm, not a cyborg or something like that, and I'm a human being and I've had the same kind of experiences they have, I think it helps them to get comfortable with the fact that, hey, this guy he might be okay to work with and talk to and share some things with, because, a lot of the things that people want to or have to talk about that they don't want to talk about are pretty intimate, whether it's relationships that we're working on or finances or what we're going to do with family members. These are things that it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get them to talk about things. So I think engaging them and getting them to just open up and tell me some family stories and things, I think is just a big win for me when I realize they are comfortable and they feel like, you're not, I guess one of the nicest comments I get is, we thought you were going to be some stuffy, blankety blank lawyer and you actually, can talk to people. So.
Mhm. So it's interesting because this kind of goes hand in hand with the story you told about the gentleman that went to Fort Wayne. But what do you think people misunderstand about lawyers in these small communities, and what's different about how you practice, at Murray Law?
I don't see it as much. Yeah, I don't see it as much anymore, but I used to see it quite a bit where people would think that they needed to go to, for some reason, the same guy that sat next to me in law school, the same guy that sat next to me took the bar exam and did the same continuing legal education courses because he has an office in Lafayette or Indianapolis, the big cities, that they're smarter and better than we are as lawyers. I think that's one of our first hurdles, is that for some reason people, and I don't mean everyone, but some reason people just think that us little podunk small town lawyers just don't know as much as those big city boys. And I don't know why that is, but I don't think they realize that, we've gone through the same education and training and have more, I think, more experiences that would relate to them than, the people in I hesitate to say city folks, but the people that are, and the lawyers that do work. And that's one of my hurdles, I think. It was earlier on in my law career, I think, and I don't see it so much now, but I think it's still there. And I had a revelation over Christmas last year that I read every year at Christmas. I always try to read that book by Dickens, A Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite characters is Mr. Fezziwig. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story or not, Evan.
Very much so.
Yeah, Fezziwig is the guy in Scrooge's past that he used to apprentice for, and he throws a party, and and believe it or not, there's I thought, man, that's kind of my management style, and that's how I deal with people, and that's it just dawned on me that sometimes you are what you read, and I read that. I've read that story every year for it's just one of my things I do every Christmas. So I pull that book off and I read it in the original old English and everything. So
that's awesome.
Cool. But but being a Fezziwig is kind of my thing, and it's a people first kind of situation. And I tell everybody, when you come to our law office, you're going to have fun, even if it's something that's not pleasant that you're coming to my office to deal with. We're going to have fun, because I think that's what we need to. We don't have enough fun anymore as a society. There's too much junk out there that is a negative impact on us. But I've always been that way, and while we're having fun, we get a lot of things done for you at the same time.
Speaking of that though, Tim, you've been active in local school, church, community boards. Yeah, how has that involvement kind of shaped the way you serve clients, or how clients even respond to you?
Well, I guess one of the reasons I do those kind of things that you mentioned is that I think we have a responsibility to our communities and other people to, if you have the ability to do things, you ought to be doing them. I think and you don't have to be a lawyer or a doctor or an Indian chief to do those things. If you have the ability to reach out and help someone and be on a board or do those things, I just think we have the duty. I don't know if it's an obligation. We have the duty to do those things. And I think how it helps me is I learn things from being on the health board or being on a community board, or I learn things that are going on in the community. I find out what people are, what makes them tick because of an issue that's happening in Winnemac, or because, Francisville, which is another little town here in our county, what's going on over there and why? And maybe we kind of have a east side, west side of the county rivalry, I guess is a good way to put it. We have Winnemac's on the east side school systems and West Central's on the west side school systems. And it's a rivalry. It's a healthy rivalry, I like to think. But sometimes we don't have a clue as to what's going on the west side of the county with people, and in Francisville and Madeireville and some of these little towns, and just to get to know their issues and how I might be able to help those kind of things out, how they apply, across all boundaries, and how we can do things. It's a learning experience for me to know what's going on, and I get to contribute and help people at the same time.
So, Tim, I wanted to get to this one question. Looking back over the years, is there a moment or a story that really kind of captures, why you're proud to be that hometown lawyer?
Wow, it's a biggie. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know if there's one story so much as there might be a collection of times when, over the years, I guess when I have 5 kids, and I think when I felt the coolest about what I do, or like having a wow moment, is when one of my kids comes up to me or comes home and says, "Hey, do you know somebody named John Doe?" And I go, "Well, yeah." And so you got to remember, attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. My kids and my wife, they don't know. I don't take my work home. I don't talk about it at home. They don't know anything other than, Dad's a lawyer. He's got an office, uptown. But, when somebody comes up to one of my kids and says, "Hey, aren't you Tim Murray's kid, son or daughter?" And they're like, "Yeah." And like, "Wow, man, I just want you to know how cool it was. Your dad just saved me or did something so fantastic. And, what a great guy." And when my kids hear that kind of stuff about me and they come home and they tell me that, I'm going to get choked up just talking about it. But they come home and they tell me that, I'm just like, wow, I must be doing, finally, I must be doing something right. So, yeah, but that's, I think, and I've had, most of my kids have had that experience that, they just got to hear something cool about Dad, and then they shared it with me, and that touched me more, and those kind of things that I know that I helped somebody to the point that, they shared it with one of my kids.
So, Tim, for anyone listening outside your immediate area, what do you hope they take away from, the way you run your practice and serve Indiana families?
We're here to help people and serve people. And I think we don't put profit and making money first. Not that I don't like taking your money, don't get me wrong, but what can we do what's the situation and what do we need to do to make things right? I want somebody to walk out of here and they'll heavy sigh. Wow, I'm glad I met with those guys. I mean, I'm glad I met with Murray, and and I have wonderful staff that people love. They love to work with my staff, Lindsay and Victoria and Mary, and actually they get more comments and compliments than I do, because a lot of times I get to meet people, then they got to work with them. So, and I'm blessed that I have great people here that I don't have to keep telling, treat people nice or be kinder. But I just think I want it to be a good experience for someone, because people come to us with situations and social issues. I guess one time someone said that, lawyers are social doctors. We heal or help heal the social aspects and things in people's lives, and just help make life better. And I think that's what we want to emphasize and send out a message to people about, is that's what we try to do here. We try to help people, and that's our continuing, I guess, mission in life.
Good stuff. Tim, thank you so much for your time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you, Evan.
All right, that's it for today's episode of Protect What Matters, Estate and Elder Law with my man, Tim Murray, a Winnemac lawyer in Indiana. If you'd like to learn more about estate planning, probate, or Murray Law services, visit tmurraylaw.com or call 574-946-7819. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review so more Indiana families can find the help they need. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.